in my head, it made me think, well, they signed you because they wanted you to write songs for other people.
Yeah, that was
yeah. And, you know, but obviously when you have your own band and you're doing your own thing, that's not your goal. Your goal is to make music that you want to make.
And I wanted to do, I mean, I wanted to make my own music and write my own songs, and it was just a matter of confidence that I hadn't gone about it in a full-blown way. But Ben Folds 5 happened because I got so kind of scared of the process after Nashville that I ended up taking kind of a year off from even thinking about music. And I lived in New York at that time, bless you, and I had my little publishing deal, which was paying some kind of money, and then I was in a Buddy Holly story. It was a play, it was a musical theater piece, and I wasn't playing quite here. And suddenly I realized that all the things that were getting me rejected, basically, were becoming valued. There's to me, informality in lyrics is probably what, if I had to say for myself, what marks a song that makes me happy when I write it. It's getting away from the formality. And in the 80s and the early 90s, at this time when I was trying to get a way to make records, they all seemed to put on a mask. And the lyrics put on a mask. And it's not like roses are red, violets are blue, but it kind of was a language, and it was all about sort of impressing someone that they knew the answer. And that, I would try to write that way a little bit, but it would make me sick. And I had things about it that I felt like I wanted to break the law with. And then I heard Liz Phair's Exile in Guyville record, and I was like, to me, this is what I did. I know I'm a lot different from Liz, but that was inspiring because that was actually, people were buying that. And it wasn't in time, it wasn't in tune, but it was real, and it was very informative. You knew what Liz was thinking. It didn't have any kind of static. And to me, that set me off, and I was ready to go. And I started realizing that there was so much music. As a music student, I didn't know about I knew about the Replacements, but I didn't really know much about, the real indie rock that was going on below everything. Of course, Nirvana came and blew that wide open, and pretty soon everything's acceptable then. And a piano band that plays with a distorted bass would be a good idea, I thought. So I moved back from New York, where I was for a while, to Chapel Hill, because I knew Robert Sledge, who was a bass player, played like heavy metal bass with a lot of fuzz. And I thought that, a punk rock drummer, and my musical theater approach on the piano would get me the sound that I wanted. And we got together and we rehearsed for a month. We played our first gig, maybe a month or two later, just local, Cat's Cradle kind of stuff, openers. And within a year, we had our first record out. And it moved really fast then. We moved the piano ourselves. I had a Baldwin baby grand piano that I borrowed a lot of money to get, and was always in danger of being repossessed for a while. We put it in a van, put it up on its side, and we'd roll it to the gigs. And there was nothing that made me happier as someone who wasn't really a punk rocker than to upset the punk rock establishment with a piano. Because we were playing just grunge clubs, and it was always freaking these guys out, the same way as their music would freak out my parents. And I thought that was really exciting.
Nothing like a piano to freak out the punks.
And it also tries to break the stage. You put it on the stage, and the stage is
I can see that. In 930 Club or something. Yeah. I mean, did anyone ever try to steal your piano out of the back of the van? Can you imagine going out and it's like these guys?
Dude, go back with that.
Wow. Yeah. I was also reading, you used to play, how do you say the club that you and Jeff Buckley played a lot? Chenet?
Chenet, Cafe Chenet.
Yeah. What was that like?
Cafe Chenet was like, did anyone ever go there back in the day?
I went there.
Yeah, it's like a little coffee shop.
Yeah.
It was on St. Mark's Place. It was teeny, maybe fit 20 or 30 people in there. Yeah, and they would get, that was a place to do residencies. Jeff Buckley was playing, I think, on Tuesdays. I was playing on Wednesdays. I was playing to my friends, about 5 of us in there when we play, and Jeff would come and just pack it out, all 30 people.
It was a small place. So I remember going in there a couple times, but to me, it's one of those famous kind of places in my head. You know, it's because of those records that were recorded. You know, I think there's a Jeff Buckley live album there and stuff like that. So I kind of think of that, and I saw that you were playing there and stuff. Back to the team for a second, though. When did you talked about putting your band together and getting signed to a record label. Did you have a manager then?
Yes. Yeah, Alan was my manager then. I had that publishing deal. And there's just so much to the story. But I ended up in New York because they were sort of dropping me in Nashville. But there was a woman in maybe I should back up. My publishing that was the bad contract was sold from my lawyer when he decided not to do it anymore to Sony Tree, or it was Tree. Tree was then bought by Sony. Tree wasn't happy with the demos I was making for them because it was waltzes about Howard Cosell and stuff like that. It wasn't working for them. And so I was sort of being dropped, but then I had a fan in New York who worked for Sony. And that's why I moved to New York, because she was going to keep my publishing contract going. I had no intention of pursuing the music. That was my dark year. I went and did the theater stuff, but she was booking me all these gigs. Like she booked me at Cafe Chenet, and one time I played at the Bitter Inn, and I broke 2 piano strings, so I had to pay more than I made that night. And that's when I met Alan, my manager. He came in and saw me play and thought I was playing Purple Haze on the piano, and he thought that was great. He said, "I'd like to manage you." And I didn't really want a manager, so I told him I don't want a manager, I don't want a music career. And he came back and saw me at Chenet. At Chenet, he said, "Man, you were brilliant. I told you you were great at Bitter Inn, and you suck tonight." "Really? You want to talk?" So, because I was really interested in his point of view, and we talked, we became friends, and within a couple of weeks we decided, you know, this New York thing's not for me. I need to move back to Chapel Hill and do it the way that I understand. So my first sort of team member was my manager, and he just, you know, he worked at a record company and wanted to try management, and that's how, you know, so we learned together, you know. And then I had after a while I had a tour manager at home, and he worked for Slayer over here, and yeah, he thought so. And then he became the second guy. And then pretty soon, you know, we're signing a deal, then we need a lawyer. I've got a lawyer. And then we got our first record advance, and then we needed a business manager to explain to us why we had to borrow money the next year to pay taxes. And what else did I get? I got a booking agent.
Sure. I mean, when did you get the booking? Were you starting, you know, in that time frame when you started up the band, you were playing there on the East Coast, you know, I mean, did you have an agent, or was Alan doing that for you, or did you just call it venues yourself? How did you start getting those early gigs?
The first ones we called up the venue ourselves, and we just made it work, 1 gig a month kind of. And Alan, you know, through some contacts, got us an opener for the Smithereens, if you remember the Smithereens. They were real nice. Their crew wasn't that nice, and they wouldn't be very helpful about us getting the piano on stage. Some nights we wouldn't even play because they kind of blocked the entrance and we couldn't load the piano on. Then the next thing came up, let's see, at Heather Nova, we got openers. We were all calling in back to our jobs, you know, like we were waiting tables and stuff. And we got a sequence of tours that we kept on having to call back until finally we just called it quit. And we kept going. And over that time, we were building a reputation for being a loud band that had played really happy music, that had a real piano on stage. Caroline Records signed us based on the show that they saw us play in New York. Alan got them out. We didn't have any product or demo. They signed us based on that, and we recorded a rehearsal for them on the Jambox. Lyle Presley. Yeah, Minor Threat.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so, well, I was going to ask you about your first deal on Caroline. Caroline Records was one of the early independent labels that actually got backing from, I believe it was EMI Music Group, early on. So they were one of the first independent labels to actually have money. So I would assume you got a really big deal when you signed there.
We know it's interesting. We were really attracted to being on an independent label, but I ended up making them a little logo that said "Major Hassle on an Indie Budget," because as we started doing better, they started acting like a major label. Like suddenly, like our album cost $3,000 to make, and when we started getting some success and some radio started to kick in, our video cost $150,000. So already I could see that it was a weird business, and so signing to a big major label, well, that's fine. We're going to get, that way we're going to get $500,000 to make a record and $150,000 to make the video, which is more in line. But making a $3,000 record and making the $150,000 video seemed weird to me.
No, I managed to band on Sub Pop in that era, a band called Reverend Me. I remember their thing at Sub Pop. I mean, same thing. They gave them so little money to record, and so they made a record that sounded like a $3,000 or $4,000 record. And then they gave them like $40,000 to make the video, and the lead singer of the band was making the video, so I couldn't argue with it. It was like, well, because he got all the money. But it always bothered me about that.
And arguably, if we'd had a big budget on the first record, it probably would have been terrible. So.
Well, that first time, I want to know about the first time you went into the studio. I mean, with that huge $3,000 budget, and you were going to go wild. Did you go up to New York to record, or did you stay at home in North Carolina?
Well, to be fair, what happened is they actually gave us $14,000, and we spent that with a producer. We liked his name. His name is Stiff Johnson. His real name's Dave. But we made that record in Philadelphia, and it wasn't very good. And we just submitted ourselves to typical production. He was really good at that. But all the things that we wanted to do were very out of whack. Like, the bass needed to be louder than everything because it had fuzz on it, and the piano actually wasn't the lead instrument; it needed to be pulled down. The background vocals we wanted louder than anything, and we wanted everything to happen naturally, not to happen on the click. So this record made a friend of mine. She came and listened to it, and she cried because it was so bad. And she was really upset that this was our big shot and we weren't going to do it. So she gave us $3,000.
Oh, wow. I mean, did you feel like you didn't have the right to argue with the producer? I mean, were you kind of like, I'm not messing around with Stiff because, I mean, I think that's an important learning curve for you guys too. I mean, just because you're going to the studio and someone there pretends like he knows more than you do, it doesn't mean he does. You know how you want to sound. And maybe you're a pop act and you sign to a major label and they tell you how to sound. That's when you listen to it. You're going to be the next Britney Spears or whatever. But if you're making music like you were, or like the Flaming Lips or whatever, you got to listen to yourself. And but as you're starting out, there's an element of it's hard to allow yourself to do that. And I think this is a perfect case of that. Say.
Well, I think the whole thing is it's a balance of what you can control and the collaboration between you and your circumstances, the mistakes, the universe, really. The comet comes by and something's going to happen. If you try to control it too much, my feeling has always been that people want, no matter who you are, you want to conform on some level. And it's not going to be very interesting. That's what's not very interesting to me about software-based stuff, is that given every choice in the world, I tend to want to sound like everyone else. So I like the idea of an outside force that I have to somehow work against. I mean, one of my favorite artists of all time is W. Eugene Smith. He's a photographer, and he did such amazing work when he was under the thumb of the man at Life magazine. Once he didn't have that wall anymore, then it wasn't good. So I've always felt like a producer would be a good fit. It just has to be the right producer. And you know, once I made a record, the one called Rockin' the Suburbs, I wanted to subject myself to the way people record right now. Like all that Pro Tools shit, all the big crunching number stuff. I wanted it to sound like, because I think being part of the fabric of now is exciting sometimes. And so I subjected myself to input that made me sick. And I would come home and I would almost be in tears. My wife would say, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" I actually don't know. But there's something I'm trying to do. I tried to do that with Stiff, but Stiff just wasn't the right thing at the right time. So I don't know. When I subject myself to a producer, I get really submissive. But then when I do it myself, I want to make all my mistakes and I just want to let it happen. And I think both ways are very frustrating. But I think recording music, writing music can be kind of frustrating sometimes. But yeah, giving it up and thinking that someone's going to make your music for you, that's probably not going to happen.
Well, who did you do the $3,000 record with?
He became the fourth member of the band. He who made the produce that record. His name was Caleb Southern, and Caleb had recorded Super Chunk records in his bedroom. He'd done Archers of Loaf, and I don't know if anyone knows those records, but he made some great records. They're really special, and we trusted him. And he's not a musician. He was the house monitor guy at the Cat's Cradle. That was just the right chemistry, and he was a member of the band. We never made a record without Caleb, and I don't think he made any records for anyone else after he made ours. That's a different thing to me. That's kind of like the George Martin thing, where the guy is a part of your band, probably like Dave Friedman is for the Lips, I suppose sometimes. I mean, it feels like they're in the band, so it's not like you're in the studio with Dad. You're in the studio, and one of your musicians is behind the glass, and it's not going to let you kind of sail off the wrong place, or even might have an idea that you would trust. But that's really rare. And now, you kids, growing up with your computers, I think there's also, I said that I'm not excited about, I'm actually very excited about software music. I think it's really, really exciting. I just don't trust myself with it because I don't understand it.
Well, we have some classes that could really help you out with that. We have scholarships available. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, you did that first record, and then, but I remember when that came out, it was like, it seemed, you know, the press was all over it, and it felt like there was a real energy around, you know, the hype around it and everything. I think because what you guys were doing was different, you know, it was the height of grunge, and here you were, no guitar, out there doing this thing. And, you know, as you'll find out, you know, really to make the next record, you have to have some success with the one before it. That's just how it works. And so you had enough success with that record to be able to make the next record. And did you do that one for Caroline as well?
No. We had, by the time the first record was out, there was already the big 90s style bidding war going on. And we had already signed to Sony. So we signed to Sony 550 and made our second record in my house in Chapel Hill. You know, it was, we just brought in recording equipment into my 700 square feet house. This was a teeny place, and recorded it with a few months. But that was for Sony. Yeah, it's a big budget, but we spent all the money on recording equipment in my house.
Smart choice. A familiar story, actually.
Except that then we all had to live in it together. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you know, Brick, of course, ended up being a hit off of that record. I mean, what do you think was the catalyst? And of course, it was a great song, and that's why it becomes a hit. You know, to some degree, it's because of that. But there's more around it. You know,
Yeah.
Was it the video? Was there a meeting where someone said to you, you know, this is the song. We're going to spend some money on this. We're going to focus on this. And were you happy with that, or were you like, no, it's this song, but they went with it otherwise? Or was that process okay for you?
That process was fine to me. It was kind of like I feel about the producers. I think when I let a label come in and do these things, I don't care what they put make it over. I mean, I have had the odd conversation with them about it, but for the most part, I think I realized pretty quickly that if a record label is excited about promoting a song, and you talk them into the song that they're not excited about promoting, what's the point? They need to go ahead because it's just something to advertise your record. I think a single is nothing to say about a single. It's an advertisement for your record. They thought that Brick was a hit, and they had a plan for it, which was we were going to release 2 up-tempo things that were what the band was about, and then they would sort of unleash our power ballad the same way as that Every Rose Has its Thorn band did. That was the model.
Yeah, right. You were basing your model after it. Yeah,
it was. That's what Alan had worked on before, and he said, you know, you got to do your 2 rockers and then you blow it wide open with your power ballad.
and it worked.
It did. And we were so relieved because we were moving a baby grand piano, you know, driving the van, and we were becoming sick and tired. Like literally sick and absolutely tired. You know, we were driving this van up and have to have enough parking space to get the piano down the ramp, and then have to have enough space to clear that, and then find some thug to help you get onto the stage. You know, 3 years of that, it gets old. So when they said, well, Brick is going to be a hit, we think, I was just like, I hope so. I really hope so. And then when it was just a relief. It was like, this means I can keep going and I don't have to move the piano.
So that meant you didn't, but someone else did.
Yeah. But they were paid a lot more than I ever was. So
yeah, that's fair, totally, yeah. So what about the Naked Baby Photos record? Was that, it was a compilation of stuff, was this kind of a contractual obligation to Caroline to kind of finish it up? So.
Yeah, that was when we got out of our deal. They had the right to put out another record of whatever we had recorded. And I called it Naked Baby Photos because the reason that I was okay with letting those out was because we didn't know any better when we made them. It's like if you take a picture of, you know, a naked baby, no one's going to, you know, throw that up on Twitter and kick you out of office or anything, you know. But as an adult, obviously, we know better. So to me, it was really okay with me to show everyone our really, you know, our naked baby photos. So I just let them do what they wanted to with that, and gave them a stack of stuff that were board tapes and stuff that we had, you know, that we've done that we didn't like.
What time is it? I just want to know real quick where we're at.
8 o'clock.
Okay, so we'll talk for a few more minutes, and I do want to let you know, people be able to ask questions that are here and stuff, as long as you're okay with that. Yeah. Okay, there's a couple things that I want to know about. We talked a little bit about this, but William Shatner, working with William Shatner. Many of you know that I'm a big Star Trek fan, and so how did that happen? I mean, it's just surreal to think that you could just call him up and say, "Hey, Bill, let's go make a record together." I mean, was that kind of what happened, or how did this work?
Well, literally, right. What made the album happen was actually he called me, Benny, it's Billy. But that's because we knew each other. The reason we knew each other is because I wrote a song that I had William Shatner's voice in mind for. You know, at the time I was writing songs, I didn't want to hear myself singing. Because I had The Transformed Man when I was a kid, which was William Shatner's album that he made in the 60s. And as I came to know Bill, I find out that he doesn't remember making it. It was on the press schedule. And he came in, you know, like on break from some Star Trek thing, and just recited all this stuff and left. But to me, as a kid, it was really exciting because his voice made me listen to what he was saying. And as I grew older, I realized all the thousands and thousands of voices out there speaking. Why is this guy's voice interesting? And it wasn't just because he was in Star Trek. I wasn't as interested in Star Trek. I was interested in his voice. To me, The Transformed Man was a big record. I really liked that record. I got it at a yard sale when I was a kid, and I really loved that record. So I'd written a song for William Shatner to speak, and college, roughly around college, and sent it. I got an address, like some book in the library, sent it to William Morris Agency. They sent me back a form letter and said, you know, they weren't going to use it. And I kept performing later for a while, but when we had our hit with Rick, I started phoning in all my favors with the record label. It's like, okay, I want to make an instrumental record that's going to be spoken word. Can you get William Shatner for me? And they did. So the power of a hit. I know. It's a power that I never had after that. And it is crazy power, because the power of the potential, like the kinetic hit, is huge. I've never gotten my ass kissed so hard as before we had that hit. Even after, now I sell many more tickets, probably more records, I have more people know who I am. I feel normal now, but I did not feel normal in that run up to the hit through the hit-making machine, because everyone feels like they want to, that this is going to be the next big thing. That's more exciting than actually once you arrive, you know, for other people. I thought it was horrific. I thought some of it was exciting and then some of it was gross. So Shatner, yeah, so he was approached by a record label to make years later, after Fear of Pop, in about 2003, 2004, to make a record of his spoken word stuff. But they wanted him to do like pop covers, like I remember they wanted him to do Material Girl by Madonna and stuff like that as a joke. And so when he called me and asked me my advice, I said, I think you should just tell the story of your life. Forget all that stuff. Work with musicians who grew up watching your TV show and respect you, and want to hear your story. Put real music behind it, and use this as an opportunity to tell your story, because it hasn't happened yet. You get that chance one time, and he had waited until he was 70 years old to spend that currency. And I thought that he should do it. And then he called me back a couple days later. That's when he said, Benny, it's Bill. And wanted me to produce it. It's like, right on, I'll do it. So I just started calling anyone that I knew that I thought would be an interesting collaboration. Joe Jackson, Henry Rollins, Amy Mann, can't remember who else worked on it. Adrian Ballou worked on it. And yeah, and what we did was Shatner wrote 50 lyrical pieces in a week. He just went nuts. And he wrote all this stuff, and actually a lot of it, the form was pretty reasonable. So I found a way to make music around it. And then I asked him to cover Common People by Pulp, because I thought that originally it was going to be Shatner, Bill Clinton was going to play sax. He called Clinton up, and he said, I'll do it, just don't tell Ben I don't want to sound like shit. It's like, yeah, that's what he said. It's like, and I wanted Weezer to be the band, and I wanted to get a gospel choir to sing. The gospel choir wouldn't do it because it had secular words with some dodgy, concepts for them, so I couldn't get a real gospel choir to it. Weezer River had rented an island somewhere and was laying in the sun. I think that's where it came from. It's true. And then Clinton, and by the time we got stuff together, Clinton was on the book tour. So then instead I got Joe Jackson, and I played the instruments for the punk band instead. And instead of a gospel choir, I got an audience in Louisville, Kentucky to sing all the parts for me, and I just had the microphone up, and we just laid it over the track. You just got to do it yourself sometimes.
And, did you like being a producer?
I do like being a producer. I like being a producer in that way, where I'm bringing to life something that otherwise wouldn't have a home in music, like William Shatner speaking his songs, like working with Nick Hornby recently. We made a record together. Nick had never made an album of his lyrics. And he's a brilliant writer. He's got all these great books he's written, and he hasn't done that. So to me, that was, again, an important currency, that I could bring his lyrics to life. He would send me lyrics, and I would write songs to it. And he was thrilled, because I think he'd liked it even if it sucked, because he got to hear his lyrics become music. And as it turns out, I think they're really good songs.
Right. And you also worked as a producer with Amanda Palmer from Dresden Dolls. And are there any other production things you're working on?
I'm going to the studio next week to start working with Sarah Bareilles. That's more of a traditional producer thing, I suppose. I just want to make sure that I think what she just needs is someone to tell her when to go home. So that's kind of the kind of producer I'm going to be.